Hello, and welcome to the first Simbad ED Podcast. I'm Corvin, and I'm the community manager and content manager for Simbad. And joining me today are two of the other regular podcast crew members. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves, guys?
I'm Smidget. I'm one of the founders of Simbad.
I'm Leavism. I'm the head recruitment of Simbad.
So that's what you guys do. So we're pretty much all admins with the clan. We plan to have just, average members come in here from time to time and give their piece about what we do and just have their input. So, how the podcasts are going to work. This is obviously the first one, so this is kind of just a test to see how things work. Essentially, the podcasts are just going to go down kind of a semi-formal structure of topics to talk about anything to do with Elite Dangerous, and also just what we're doing generally just around the game. So that's what we'll mainly be talking about, and anything important or extraordinary that comes up in the game, we'll also be talking about. So we're recording these on Thursdays because that's usually when dev updates come out. But something's going on where dev updates aren't coming out until the release of an upcoming patch, which is a 2.1 engineers patch, I believe. So I have no idea why they're doing that. And we can discuss this if we want to. I can kind of understand that they'd probably be focusing on the work itself, but I recall hearing someone talking about the fact that they delayed it due to financial reasons or something along those lines.
Yeah, I believe it was so that they can consider it for not this quarter's financing, but next quarter's.
From what I heard, it didn't meet their quality expectations, and it didn't meet their standards. So they wanted to deliver proper quality in their content when they released it, and since it wasn't up to their standards and expectations of themselves, they postponed it.
So obviously, within the recent past couple of years, I think this kind of came up in 2013 at the earliest, where games have started to be released that feel unfinished and feel rushed. Do you think that this is to do with that? Like the fact that there's a problem with content not being complete?
Well, in other games, yeah, I've seen it. I can't say from experience because Elite Dangerous is actually the first game I've spent extended time on. Like, in about 4 hours, I would have spent about 6 weeks in game time. And I have read about other games having their content just like not finished but already released. And playing Elite, I bought Horizons. I pre-ordered Horizons, right? And it was something that a lot of my friends were against because, like pre-orders make the game bad. Developers release it too early. But playing in Horizons, landing on the planets, you'd have to admit it was actually pretty smooth. I don't think I've ever crashed once trying to land. I mean, like the
Yeah.
game crashing.
See, my 2 cents though is when it comes to like let's say you look at something like Battlefield 4 or even something like Elder Scrolls Online, those games when they were made and released, there was a lot of advertising and a lot of hype, and the games were when the developers went ahead, they released the games, and they had patch after patch after patch to get the game in a stable state and actually eliminate a lot of the bugs. When, in my opinion, the game should still have been in beta to begin with. So, with that being said, it seems like that Frontier Developments, they actually want to avoid that happening, and they want to ensure that they're having consistent quality when they give us content that they've promised, and they don't want to disappoint the people that continue to support them. Now, the only issues that I can think of off the top of my head is that when they first the initial release of Horizons was done, there was optimization problems with the textures on planets that was actually causing big frame rate drops when anyone was getting close to planets or looking at them. But I know that they addressed that issue pretty quickly, and that was pretty much the only one at the time. I've also heard of maybe, let's say, you get the odd bug here and there of, I was reading on Reddit a station was following someone around for some reason, wherever they went when they went on a planet. Yeah, a station. And then I remember when I was playing with Leavism one time, I would think it was him. Uh, I was parked my Federal Corvette inside an orbital, and on his screen, I was on my side and through like halfway through the landing pad. But like for the most part, it seems like they want to stay on top of like quality, and they don't want to do that mistake that a lot of developers are of doing advertising and hype to pull a lot of people in to try to get that like foundation of players for their game, and then give people something that should still be getting all the bugs ironed out, and then patch it as it goes on, and hopefully this players stay around. But if anything, it just takes away from the experience of the game. If you're playing a broken product, it makes it a little bit less enjoyable. But at the same time, the bugs can be fun.
Right. The only problem I've had with Horizons is if I'm ever driving around on an SRV on the planet and I happen to take my SRV off a really high jump and just rocket up really high, I do get some frame rate hitches a little bit, where I normally get this game on 60 frames a second because I lock it to that just so I don't get frame tearing. But whenever I get to a certain point where I can see a lot of terrain, it just dips me down to like 45 or 30 or something. But I don't think it's ever gone below 30. And I can understand that you shouldn't be able to see that much terrain from an SRV. But I mean, it happens. And sometimes it's kind of hard to maneuver in the air when you're getting massive frame rate hitches. So
I think it's just a matter of doing an optimization on view distance versus how the textures are loaded, and how much detail is actually being processed. But that maybe could be solved by user settings eventually.
Yeah, it's also one of those things where it's like we don't know enough about game development to know exactly what the issue is and how it can be fixed. We can always recommend stuff. It could totally be wrong, but I mean, it's one of those things where you don't really know, and that's what a lot of people forget when they think of content being produced. One of the things that's going on right now with content being produced is one of my favorite games that I still actively play. The makers for the game, they're right now the game's in the middle of a content lull, like a 6-month content lull where we haven't had anything new yet, and people are asking for communication from them saying, what's coming? We want to know what's coming. Like, we want a reason to continue playing this game. Otherwise, it's a stale state for the game. But the thing is that the the developers are being smart by saying, we don't want to talk about anything for fear of overhyping it. And the fact that this game has had a history of being overhyped and letting a lot of people down and being the butt end of a joke for a long time. So it's one of those things where it's like, where content comes out, you need to be able to gauge whether or not you are actually able to do it or not. So with the 2.1 delay, I'd almost want to say that it's probably coupled with financial reasons that it just happened to work out that way, but I believe the actual reason is that they're trying to get something working, but it's not, and they want to make sure that it actually works. Because
maybe that's what's actually even causing the financial reason. Like maybe they're spending a lot of money developing something, and something came up which is preventing the standard that they want to achieve. Like it's basically it's some bug or whatever they're trying to do. They can't necessarily achieve it in the way that they want. So now they have to dump more money paying their employees now to get this fixed. And because of those financial reasons as well, wherever they've done their spending, maybe it's a combination of the two for whatever the reasons may be.
But also, it's one of those things where it's like, how long was the quote-unquote content lull between Elite Dangerous' release and Horizons? Like, Horizons is a massive technical success considering what you're able to do with it. And the fact that it was talked about for so long, like, ever since Elite Dangerous came out, I remember hearing about it's just like, planetary landings, we want to land on planets. You should be able to land on planets. And, now we have it. And the fact that people are taking it for granted, like, I know that some people don't have the money to spend on, the Horizons update and Season Pass, but it's just like, people are like, there's lack of content, when essentially you're getting a galaxy full of content that should have been there at release technically, but you're getting it now where you can drive around on planets for hours and still not explore at all. So like for a small price, you're getting like endless hours of content because you can literally land on any planet and your experience is not going to be the same.
But I look at it this way as well. Like you take something, for example, Star Citizen, where you have all these people fronting all this money to get it developed, and they don't really have much right now compared to Elite Dangerous. But keep in mind, to get a ship in that game, like it could costing some people upwards of $300 to $400. Now, with that being said, if for Elite Dangerous when it initially came out, let's say $40 to $60, if you're spending that kind of money and you now have a somewhat base of a game that you might not necessarily be able to do as much as Star Citizen promised, but now if you pay an extra, almost like you're paying in installments to help support that game get developed, because Elite Dangerous, from my knowledge, it was also started on a Kickstarter. And it's just a different way of getting people to invest their money to help you develop the game. And they have a guideline of what they want to do on a yearly basis, and they're pretty open about it. Like I remember the developer, he was in an interview, and what he was talking about was that when they design a ship now, they already design it with everything in mind of what they have planned for the future. For like example, when it comes to walking around your ship, you can't see it. Well, you can somewhat when you turn your head and look behind you somewhat in certain ships and look around the cockpit. You can see how you'd be able to walk around, and they design everything with that in mind. But it's just a matter of implementing the rest of the coding and the structure for the game to make that happen. And when they work on things one thing at a time in stages, and they're just getting the money to support it, over time on a yearly basis, hence the season passes. And on top of that, you have things like a little bit of a skins and stuff for your ships as well here and there, which also helps.
The game that I was talking about earlier, which is Destiny, I play a lot of it, and of course, I'm pretty sure we're going to get a lot of butt-end jokes in wherever this is published. But the thing with that is that it's where they introduced microtransactions with the latest edition of content, which was back in September. And they said that those microtransactions were going to fund future in-game events and content. And I believe that structure twisted around just a slight little bit because a lot of people were turned on and turned off to the microtransaction method that they were implementing because it was all cosmetics. Like, Bungie is fully aware that if they ever go pay to win, that their game is just going to die out, because that's what turns a lot of people off to any game, really, is if you pay for something that is completely overpowered. But the thing is that for a lot of people, it did take off because they did do a lot of cosmetic items that a lot of people wanted. And a lot of people don't spend money on microtransactions because they either think it's just a waste, or it's not worth it, or they think it's too expensive. Whatever the reason may be that anyone would not want to spend money on a microtransaction, no matter what game. Like, goes for any game that has microtransactions. And as a result of that microtransaction implementation, Destiny did get a bunch of content from it, like small events. We've actually had 3 since then. And like it's been free. Like we didn't have to pay for those events. It just happened and they showed up one day. But for like future content, I believe it's going to be paid. But with it assuming that you're going to pay for future content through microtransactions or people buying stuff through your store is a very long stretch, because it still takes time to develop that content that they're buying. So it's almost kind of like, to me, it almost seems like they'd be breaking even if they're doing that. Like they're not really getting much.
A simple reskin, though, with a talented artist shouldn't take that long at all. It's a matter of just ripping it's a matter of ripping the file out. Like the structure of the skin that's applied is already it's already there in game. Like I've modified like Halo 2, for instance. I made my own skins. I made my own mods. It was as simple as pulling out the file and just photoshopping over the different parts of, let's say, the Warthog that I wanted to make look different. And then I would basically put the image, overwrite it again, do like a little bit of rehashing, resigning to the map, and away I would go. It's not that hard. You could do a skin in half an hour. So when you look at it, to come up with a whole couple of skins, it's not too difficult. And then in the long run, if enough people buy them, if you have a decent artist working on them, which you should have, considering if you're in game development, you obviously need talented artists working on what you're putting out there. It's not going to take very long at all. But the thing is if it's purely cosmetic, like let's say the ship skins in Elite, it's that I can support, but at the same time is they have to make sure they're putting out what people want, not necessarily something that, hey, look, here's a cosmetic skin. It doesn't really look that great, because I've seen a lot of time in like other MMOs or in MOBAs, they'll come out with a skin. Yeah, a few people might like it, but for the most part, it doesn't really look that pleasing. It's like, why am I going to spend this much money on it?
Wasn't there a community contest for making skins for certain ships?
Yes, apparently there's going to be another one coming up from what I've heard as well.
No, but I'm talking about the one that already happened. I heard that one came up with some pretty good-looking skins that everyone liked, but then I haven't heard anything else about it. Like, were any of the Anaconda skins and the Courier skins part of that competition?
I'm not entirely sure, because I haven't read up on that contest too much, but I do know that when those skins were, like when the competition for those skins was finished, they were actually able they allowed people to purchase those skins now. And you look at it, like those small little microtransactions, let's say just how they just had the sale even on a lot of the skins, like for the Anaconda, how they came out with new ones for that, as well as like a lot of the Vibrant Paint packages, they were all 40% off. You look at it, that's a good way to get a couple extra bucks for, let's say that you look at the timing of 2.1 being pushed back due to financial issues and not meeting the quality standard. From a business perspective, putting everything on for 40% sale, a lot of people are going to jump on that. And a lot of people who normally wouldn't spend money on microtransactions, they're going to say, hey, look, I can get something for about almost half the price. You know what? There's a couple that I want, and I might dish out an extra few bucks here or there. Or someone that, necessarily would buy the skins to begin with, they might buy a couple extra just because they're so cheap, because they see themselves buying them farther down the road.
It's also one of those things where it's like they also can't do sales too often, because then people would be like, oh, this skin's going to go on sale for a month, so I'm not going to buy anything until the next sale, which will happen in X amount of weeks. Because if they do it too often, then people are going to expect it and not spend anything during that downtime between sales. Like, the last time the skin sale happened, it was only for a few skins. That was about a month ago, if memory serves me right. And then before that, the last major sale was the Black Friday one, I believe. But it's just like one of those things where it's like they have to be far enough apart where people can't anticipate them, but they can't be too close together where they won't make enough money in between those downtimes between sales.
Well, are you talking about the Black Friday skin sale or Black Friday skins themselves?
The sale.
Okay.
So, with that discussion being that, how does that essentially judge your time in Elite? Like, are you still playing it actively, even though that the patch is going to be delayed a couple months, or are you kind of devoting your time to a different game? How's that going?
I'm right now. I'm actually being preoccupied by Black Desert Online a lot, because it's a fairly decent game, but now at the same time it's a combination of one, waiting for 2.1 to come out, but it's been about 4 weeks now for Frontier to implement our faction into the game, when we have already registered it. They said it would be out by the end of February, and it's been a week and a half, almost two, since then. And there still hasn't been any sign of them implementing it. They said it's been really busy there at the office, and there's a lot of things that you can kind of connect
Yeah.
the dots to and see why they've been so busy. Like 2.1 being pushed back, and they're really struggling to try to get this out on time. So you can kind of see how that's their focus, but at the same time, it'd be nice as well if they were to try to keep the players involved a little more, because that update's been pushed back. So trying to do more community goals and just maybe get one or two people there to be focused on that a little bit more, and things up in the future maybe that they're working on, pull away from working on that slightly and take those people and get them to work on the updates that they're having issues with, just to try to keep the player base more active.
One thing that I do have to admire Frontier Developments for doing is that they keep players around during these downtimes. As you just said, they all of a sudden just started popping community goals as if it was raining manna from heaven. Like, from my experiences, community goals were like bi-weekly events. Now they almost seem weekly. So there's like a lot more. So like there's like not a lot more new. I think we do. Yeah, I think no one just started up today or is starting. I have that pulled up as a later topic, but
Two more popped up. Usually the community goals are paired now. Usually it's a trade or a mining community goal, and then it's paired with a bounty hunting or a conflict that like is meant to protect what the other community goal is about.
Right. So that's one thing they're doing well, is that they're keeping people tied in with activities that help progress the sim a little bit further, because some of the things that community goals spawn are, stations or outposts on distant planets outside the inhabited bubble, which furthers the expansion. And also the fact that, like, the Thargoid stuff comes up. Like, I don't think it was a community goal, but Frontier Developments teased that the barnacles were out there somewhere, and then all of a sudden people were like, oh my god, we need to find them. And then, like, a couple days later, all of a sudden we're like, hey, we found him. So it's just like, it's very easy to spark community playtime together. It's very easy for Frontier Developments to do that. So they don't technically have a problem keeping people around. However, people that do feel the content lull, they probably will go over to other games like yourself, Smidget. However, I'm not feeling a content lull. It's more or less that other games are currently distracting me from Elite, but we'll get to that in a sec. Leavism.
Yeah, I feel kind of the same way, because Black Desert Online just came out, and I saw it and I was like, ooh, this game looks awesome. And I went, and obviously if I'm buying a new game, I'm going to want to go and play it for a little while. The timing just kind of seems to fit as well.
And I don't want to talk about a whole bunch of other games too much, but I have to say the character creation for that game is a freaking programmer's wet dream and nightmare at the same time.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, I wanted to like really capitalize and make it important that a game like Elite Dangerous, I think the most important part and what keeps the game going is the community, the feeling of community, right? I know that community goals weren't like an original feature that the game was going to make. I think someone came up with, like a player came up with the idea and gave it to Frontiers, and Frontiers like, let's kick it. Right?
Yeah.
Well, just the way that they actually listened to the feedback of the community as well. When they wanted to basically have you lose a percentage of money, even on swapping out internals and hard points. And a lot of people weren't happy with that because of, how hard it might have been to get credits at certain times. And then it didn't seem fair. So they adjusted it so that only upon selling the ship, you now lose a percentage of your credits, as opposed to if you swap out internals or any hard points. But at the same time as well, what I would like to see, like if you look at, like, let's say the dev updates, how they say they want to essentially increase the amount of rewards you can get from doing missions other than credits. Like they were talking about maybe getting like a location of information about where a cache would be with a lot of like materials or goods and stuff like that. Like let's say how you can only get materials for, let's say, to make a frame shift drive boost. Maybe you can find like a cache for that, or with the engineers coming in, maybe you would get other materials that might be implemented into the game once that comes up. I think that would be pretty awesome. What would be even better, I think, is if they actually tied community goals in with giant caches.
Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting thought.
Like if they could, like, let's just say if like, they can make a community goal for like and reward people with a cache of a bunch of items or a location for it, and then it'd be really awesome for people to like see people going in there to collect like to collect where all these raw materials are apparently sitting, or getting rewarded this cache, because it's going to drive a lot more player activity, as opposed to, hey, this person wants to send a bunch of slaves over to this station to create a slave city. You want to help? Sure. And like, that's about it. But if you're getting more than just, let's just say a little bit of credits or helping the community with whatever they're doing, you're seeing more personal gain out of it, other than just maybe a simple few credits here and there. So people are going to be a little bit more driven to do the community goals. And with that being said, you're going to see more people interacting, and it's going to overall increase people's enjoyment.
Yeah, it's the personal enticement that would bring people closer to, or would bring more people to participate in the community goal. And a recent example of that is the community goal in LHS 3447. Like, that broke records because it brought a station to a system that was like closer to the sun, where it was a beginner system where noobs would have to fly over 100,000 light seconds to get to the closest station. And this community goal was building a station closer to the beginning sun, like the anchoring sun. And this community goal like broke records in participations within the early hours, and it reached tier 8 pretty early at the start.
So, speaking of sparking community interaction, do you want to know one thing that Frontier Developments could say that would send everyone into a wild craze? Thargoids. If they just dropped another hint of aliens, everyone would be like, oh my god.
Hey, maybe that's what's coming at 2.1. Maybe that's why it's not ready yet. Who knows?
Actually, I have... It's way too obvious, but the question marks on the 2.4 patch for the roadmap, I was just like, aliens?
Mm-hmm.
Aliens? Are they teasing aliens? Like, to me, I think that's going to set up where it's just like, the truth about the barnacles is going to come out, and it's just like the next update is the pending, like, it's like the time between 2.4 and then the next major content drop is like preparing for the upcoming arrival of Thargoids in the galaxy. I believe that's probably what it is.
What would actually be really awesome is if later on down the road, let's say how they're putting in engineers, if they did updates now where you would have to actually get materials and try to engineer different like new types of weapons as community goals now to help fight against the Thargoids.
Oh, dude, if they had like a Minecraft base, like a Minecraft like recipe building where it's like you literally need to figure out millions of different combinations to figure out the solution to this one thing to do.
Mm-hmm. But now imagine if there was like a community goal to, let's say, bring a whole bunch of materials to engineers for research. Otherwise, the Thargoids would invade like certain systems and start to take over the populated bubble. And then we would
like a super weapon kind of community goal.
Yeah,
like build
or
one.
even just like trying to discover like technologies. You know what I mean? And then basically, it's like, imagine almost like power play. Imagine like the Thargoids being something that we couldn't support, but rather had to fight against.
Okay, so this came up a couple weeks ago, during the time where Obsidian Orbital found that Diamondback Explorer with no legal designation that was scanning it.
It was a bunch of like random characters, wasn't it?
It was an unknown. It was an unknown thing. But essentially, someone made a comment to that, and this was on Reddit, saying like, this would be really cool if the Thargoid showed up as this. And it was just like, you were flying around in Super Cruise or in hyperspace, and all of a sudden you get pulled out of hyperspace or whatever into like dark space. And all of a sudden you have like a capital ship entrance where it was just like, you'd see the first sightings of like a barnacle covered ship. And as it came into view more, it would say like Starship 1 on it. And and then it would just basically like give out this haunting blare, like the Reapers from Mass Effect or something. And then all of a sudden, like the barnacles would like shoot out these probes to your ship and like take it over and stuff, and you'd die or whatever. And have like that kind of and like have that kind of entrance.
That would be a little bit insane, and I think it'd be a lot to. I think it's over the top for them to actually implement.
Or like you know how they did the trailer for Horizons, just show that in a trailer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that would be really funny if like they chose one player to have that kind of event happen, and it's their job,
and then no one believes that player.
And no one believes that player. It's their job to convince every single player that happened to them.
Oh my god, that would subtly screw with everyone. Can you imagine like the one dude on Reddit that was like,
I think
dude,
they would have to choose a podcaster or something, or someone that like is someone who streams or, you know, regularly. So that way when they're streaming, they could like press a button and make it happen to them.
Oh my god, that'd be awesome. And then just like, but dude, can you imagine though? That would be like what real life would be in like 200 years in the future, right? If we ever have space travel, that's probably how we would discover aliens. It's like one person was just like, I saw aliens, I encountered them, and I barely escaped or whatever. And everyone's like, oh yeah, you know, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, more and more colonies start disappearing silently, and people start looking into it, and then
people are just gonna think that they're like some conspiracy theorist and no one's gonna believe him, and be like, yeah, he's crazy, just ignore him.
Yeah. No, that would be really cool if they did that, like that much type of immersion where it's like the one person that knows they exist, and everyone else is like, I need proof. I think that'd be really cool. But we kind of got sidetracked here. So, Smidget, you've been playing Black Desert Online in the content lull. Divism, I think I still see you play Elite Dangerous quite actively.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of studying on the background simulation, and I've been doing Robigo because 2.1 is bringing a bulletin board overhaul, and I'm pretty sure that's low-key nerfing Robigo, like, completely.
Keep in mind, though, if they're doing an overhaul, that sounds like they're might be doing an overhaul with the way that the missions are generated. So now, with that being said, things like Robigo were found as kind of like an error in the algorithm, as kind of like something that just so happened to fit it perfectly to cause, you know, an insanely profitable mission to pop up.
Yeah.
Now, with that being said,
sorry, I need to stop.
I was going to say,
we'll get to Robigo in a second.
What I'm getting to is more so the missions, right? Now, with the missions being an overhaul, it could potentially be more like something like Robigo could come up. So we might find, let's say, how there's donation missions for Federation rank. Maybe we'll see for some reason now Empire donation missions, or something else entirely different for some reason, like in one way or another. But maybe other missions might just become more profitable to begin with, and you know, ones like Robigo, they're not as profitable, so it brings more balance. So it brings you more reason to do other things.
Right, and we'll get to Robigo in a sec because it's a hot topic, especially amongst people thinking that it's going to get nerfed or people are going to search for the next Robigo. But so everyone's been kind of doing their own thing. I'm not necessarily feeling the content lull in Elite Dangerous. I just happened to be distracted by other games. And of course, this week was a really huge hit because The Division came out. And obviously, people who are probably feeling the content lull or in Elite Dangerous probably went over to there just to see what The Division's about. But The Division is a completely different game from Elite Dangerous. Like, it couldn't be further apart than 180. But essentially, like, for me, I'm not feeling the content level. It just so happens I'm distracted by other games currently. It's hard to say because, like, I mean, I'm currently in the middle of an exploration mission of my own, but I'm trying to get enough of my time in other games where I feel that I can come back to it at a later date so I can continue in Elite Dangerous. Because, like, my main focus is Elite Dangerous right now. As MMOs tend to do in my life, is I try to focus on one of them and then something else comes up for a time while I'm feeling the grind burn in the game for a little bit, and then to come back a little later to continue. But it's just one of those things where it's like, it's in the middle of the content lull for Elite Dangerous, and there's so much other stuff going around Elite Dangerous that I'm pretty sure it's taken away from the player base. But Frontier Developments, as I said before, is really good with keeping people around.
what's really funny for me was that I originally built my desktop to play No Man's Sky, and I bought Elite Dangerous as like a kind of practice to see how what space exploration, space simulation would be like. Look at me now. I'm about to clock in 6 weeks of gameplay, and No Man's Sky is on pre-order, and I haven't pre-ordered yet.
I've pre-ordered No Man's Sky. Actually, my issue is I got Elite Dangerous now to hold me over until No Man's Sky came out, and then I got into it with a friend of mine, and we're like, well, we need more people to play with. So then I actually ran into Coiling Dragon and Mitch, and we started the whole Simbad group, and they pulled some members from their old World of Tanks clan in. And next thing you know, it blew up into this thing where now we have roughly about 100 members as of right now. But now, this community, it's awesome. Things are going really well. But at the same time, I'm really looking forward to No Man's Sky. But 2.1 has now been pushed back into, I think, June, they said. And with No Man's Sky... And yeah, at the same release date. So now with that being said, I'm going to have No Man's Sky come out at the same time 2.1 drops, and I'm not going to know what to do with myself.
But here's the thing, though. Competition is really good, but I almost want to say that a vast majority of the player base, like I want to say percentage, but I don't want to say for being wildly inaccurate because people will be able to comment on this on YouTube, is both of you and myself bought Elite Dangerous for the reason of carrying yourself over to a different game. I bought Elite Dangerous to carry myself over to Star Citizen because, to me, the way that Star Citizen is being talked about, it's like the ultimate space sim. And it might be, but Elite Dangerous hooked me in such a way where it's like, well, I'm here permanently now. Cool. Don't care about other games. This one's out right now and it's working, so Elite Dangerous is the thing.
I loved Elite Dangerous so much when I started playing it and actually got into it and had a stable group to consistently play with that I went out and I actually bought myself the X52 Pro. So now I got like a flight stick and a throttle and everything, and I'm like, okay, well, I got this for Elite, and then I'm including afterwards. It's like, wow, I can actually potentially use this with No Man's Sky when it comes out. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a win-win, but at the same time, it's dumping like $200 on a flight stick and throttle just for a game that you play. It's kind of like, it says something.
Yeah. And when I bought Elite Dangerous, I can't remember, it was either just before release when it was still in beta, or it was just after release, but I bought it then, and Elite Dangerous was being advertised as a space combat shooter, which I think was a really wrong move. But now that Horizons is out, Elite Dangerous is being advertised as a space sim, like a general space sim. It's not focused on combat. It's not focused on exploration. It's not focused on trading. It's focused on being what it would be like if we were in a true space age, which is a proper way to market this game.
Keep in mind that it might have been marketed as a space combat game, but back then, like at first, combat wasn't necessarily the best way to make money. A lot of it was like general mission running and then trading.
A lot of it is trading.
Yeah, well, at first it was general missions to get enough to get, like, let's say, a Cobra to even start trading.
Yeah.
Like a hauler, even in, like, dumping money into the hauler and trading with a hauler, you were better off doing mission running. But then, then it was like a lot of trading and rare goods trading. But then with that trading came a lot of player combat. But now they buff bounty hunting, so now you're seeing actually a lot more people going out and doing that a lot in hazardous resource extraction sites, with a couple friends in wings and making cash that way, as opposed to, hey, this is the best way to progress, so I'm just going to trade and do mission running. No, it's like now if you really enjoy the combat, they actually reward you for that quite a bit, which is awesome.
Yeah, like if you're really smart about what you're doing in a Hazres, you can easily make like 5 mil an hour. If you're also lucky too with spawns.
I think a lot of it though has to do with the way the instance generates and how lucky you get.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I've gone out and in like 10 minutes, I've blown apart a couple anacondas with a newer player in the Simbad group, helping them get a bit of cash to either get that Cobra and get it outfitted. And, within an hour, I've made them like 3 million. Awesome. No problem. But other times it's been like half an hour, and I've only gotten them like 1.5 or like 1 million, like because we've had to spend time jumping in and out of the instance because we were only getting things like eagles, and well, that's not very fun.
Yeah, it's like when you get to a certain point in the game, with a certain ship, it's just like every time you see an eagle, it's like, ugh, it's such trash because it's like the most you can get out of it is like 20k, and it's not really worth it to shoot it at that point. Like again, that's at its best, it's worth 20k. On average, you usually pop in like 11 to 13.
Sometimes, like, yeah, 11 to 13, I would say would be a good number. But keep in mind, though, as well, is when you first get the game and you're in your Sidewinder and you go up against the Eagle, getting that 20, 30K, that's pretty solid. You know what I mean? That's a nice chunk of cash because you start off with next to nothing. But I think that's something that the game does really well is that exponential growth and progression.
Game does progression very well. I'm very happy that Elite Dangerous does it the way it does because it feels like you're in your smaller ships for an equal enough time as you're in the end game ships. And I say end game in heavy quotes because there really isn't one, but there is. So, because when I first started playing Elite Dangerous, I was in a Sidewinder for a good majority of my time, and then like my next step up from there was a Adder, and I was in there for about a week, and then the next step up was a Cobra, and then from the Cobra I went to a Type 6 and I started doing trade missions.
See, I went from Sidewinder. I did a couple missions just enough to get me a hauler. And then I was just basically doing, the whole like Lave Station, Porta, and was it Sherman Free Market or something? Basically, that whole triangle of rare trade runnings, like the 3 hot spots. I was going between the 3 in a hauler to make enough money to get me a Type 6 to do it, to then get me an ASP. Or no, after the Type 6 I got a Vulture.
All right.
And I think before I got the Vulture, at some point I got myself a Viper just because I wanted to do a little bit of combat as well, but I didn't want to dump all of my money into a combat ship because I really wanted to get that Vulture down the road. So I got a little bit of a upgraded Viper for the time being. But like for the most part, like even going between the different smaller ships, like I felt the difference. And I felt the amount of work that I had to do, and it seemed like I was even in that hauler doing those trade runs for quite a long time to get that money.
Yeah, I was in the mid-tier ship progression for a very, very long time, which makes me want to get into a different topic slightly. Is we all probably main one ship that we have in our own personal fleet, and that one main is most likely our favorite too. But I have to say, because it just reminded me, the Type 6 is probably one of the most underrated ships in the game. It's really good, and a lot of people make fun of the ship for it. Like, really, if you upgrade that thing has a jump range of almost 30 light years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and like even if you're laden, it only reduces you down to like 26 or 27. It's really good if you just equip the best friendship drive and the best thrusters and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure you can get a little bit more if you degrade everything, like explorify it, but equip it for trading. I'm pretty sure you could get it to, on average, about 30 light years per jump. But it'd
be really funny if someone. Go ahead.
Sorry. It's probably one of the most underrated ships in the game to me. Like the Type 6 is just so good.
It recently got a paint job.
Yeah, the Type 6 that would be really funny is to see someone actually out on an exploration mission. Actually, I think I saw in the Distant Worlds thing that was going on.
Yep.
I think I saw a couple Type 6s in those pictures out at Sagittarius A, and it's like to bring the Type 6 out to Sagittarius A, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but when you look at the stats, like on the Elite Dangerous wiki for the actual ship, and you look at its stats, it's actually a pretty good option for an exploration ship. And I forgot to cover it in one of my videos that I'm doing for Simbad.
Make note of it, and maybe even put it in there on one of your next ones.
Yeah, one of the last episodes is extras where I just talk about everything else that doesn't have a category, but I'll probably add it there. But it's just one of those things where it's like the Type 6 is easily one of the most underrated ships in the game. So we can talk a little bit more about what we do ourselves in the game, and what our main /favorite ship is to fly. Right now, I've been mostly exploring in an Anaconda. Everything I do is exploring essentially in Elite Dangerous with a very small percentage of my time spent actually in combat. But despite flying an Anaconda everywhere I go, I have to say that my favorite ship is the Imperial Clipper, just because it's very maneuverable, and if you equip it right, it's very deadly in PvE.
Even the Courier, I find, is a really fun ship to fly, just because it's got those three medium hard points. I love the cockpit on it as well, especially with like head tracking or VR. It's amazing.
It also
Um,
sounds like a space Ferrari.
hmm I love it. It's awesome. But there's that, and even like just for PvP, is that Stealth Diamondback Scout. You can do quite a bit with that. Like for just, and then for me, I find I have different ships for different purposes, and depending on what I'm doing, I jump between the two. Like if I want to make really quick cash to, let's say, um, I just wanted to throw some prismatics on some of my ships, so I went out and I did a couple. I got my merits weighted. So I did got them on my Federal Corvette, as well as I put them on my Python, a Fer de Lance, just to have them for now to tweak with outfitting later to see if I actually want to keep them. But just throw them on there just because. But so I wanted some quick cash. So I was running around on my ASP, and then well, new players. I wanted to jump out to our systems, so to get out back to to get back to, like, let's say Aerovate, and get them out here to get them a bit of quick cash, or even if they had a decent frame shift drive, I could just follow them with fuel limpets if they didn't have a fuel scoop, and I can jump out there and, like, let's say, 5 to 10 jumps in my Anaconda, no problem. Follow them out, refuel them if they need it, or even help them get them some cash, whatever they would prefer to do. And then I find I would go out and, let's say, just tank everything in my Federal Corvette and help get the money that way. And then for fun factor for me for combat, I just really love the Fer de Lance, just because it's got enough oomph to take on the big ships. But at the same time, like, I might even find myself dropping down to a smaller combat ship to give myself more of a rush and a challenge. I find like there's enough variety so that depending on what you want to do and like what you feel like, um, well, whatever experience you feel like having, you can go and jump in a different ship, providing you have, the bank account and the credits to do it.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the ship that you main? Like, what ship is the ship that you always go to for a general purpose that you consider like is your main ship?
I can't really say because I hop around so many different ships, because it's if I want to do something, I find myself jumping in a different ship and I want to go do something different. Like I'm either helping new people out, like uh if I'm helping out other people, I'm with doing to get the money, I'm out in a hazardous resource extraction site with my Federal Corvette. You know what I mean? If I'm
Right.
just jumping around just because, I might take my Anaconda because of the jump range. But now if I'm doing general mission running, depending on, like, let's say if it's a Robogo, doing the smuggling, I'm going to take my ass because of just in general its jump range and the amount of cargo and fuel it has. If I'm doing something like, let's say, cut the power for Empire rank, I'm going to use my Python just because it's a little bit beefier. Yet it still has decent cargo and decent hard points, and it can land on a medium pad, and it's the biggest ship that can land on a medium pad. Um, so
There are a lot of times where the Python I keep mistaking for a larger ship.
mhm. But just like in general, though, like I find that there's so many, there's such a variety of ships and like different tiers of that ship, that if you want to go out and do something that's probably going to get you killed and you're going to have to pay that rebuy cost, there's like a mid tier ship that you can go do it in. Um, or if you want, to really challenge yourself, you can drop down to that small ship. And if you want just a heavier version of it, you're able to do it. Like if you look at the Federal Corvette, that's a heavy tank. Like it's not necessarily good in PvP by itself, but if you're going out with a couple friends, sure, it's awesome. And then you have the Anaconda. It's great for exploring, or just even as like the second best trade ship right now. And then there's the Cutter as well.
Yeah. To me, I just before we get to Leavism's ships, I I think the perfect PvP group in mind to me would probably be a Federal Corvette, Anaconda, Clipper, and a Vulture.
I would say, um, yeah, having a Federal Corvette, um, something like a vulture, a fair to lance, and maybe a federal assault ship or a gunship.
Okay. And the reason why I said Clipper is because the only thing that can outrun a Clipper is a Cobra, but barely.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, is if you're a federal corvette, you don't really need to outrun a Clipper.
Right.
It might get away from you, but if they're flying away from you, technically you won the fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's different types of victories, but that's PvP. You also get combat loggers.
I hate those. Still consider those as victories, but it's just you stripped me of my satisfaction.
So, Leavism, what ship do you main?
Well, as being the head recruiter, I haven't done it lately, but what I usually do is I hop in my Anaconda. Anaconda is a great multi-purpose ship. It's huge. It's got a lot of hard points, and that jump range you can't deny that jump range, right?
I think even at the worst, the maximum jump range is like it's hovering around 20. I can't remember if it was above 20 or slightly below, but it's hovering around there.
Yeah, and from our home systems to the beginner systems, a 20 to 30 light year jump range, you'll get there in like less than 10 jumps, which is nothing.
Yeah.
And what I do as a recruiter is that when they're a new player to the game, I'll do what Smidget does, but sooner, right? He does a lot of field transfer line. He'll have them in their Sidewinder, and he'll escort them to the home system while giving them fuel every time they run out. What I do is I fly over to the beginner system in my Anaconda, and there I just put a shit ton of pulse lasers and go to, I think it's Cremain now. Yeah, Cremain has a hazardous or a high extraction site, and I go out there and I bounty hunt for about like 10 minutes, and I get them 500k, and that's enough to make them feel comfortable, right? And to get a feel of like how well their flying is. And that's when I tell them, hey, let's go get you a hauler so you can jump to our home systems. And when you're at a home system, it won't just be me helping you out, it'll be everyone else in our group. And I'll give them advice on how to outfit their hauler to get that 32 light year jump range. Like, holy cow.
Haulers are amazing taxi ships. But at the same time, like when I go out to help newer players, I give them the choice. I'm saying, well, I can either help you bounty hunt, maybe get some cash out here, and then go out to the systems we're in. But a lot of the times they'd say I'd rather get there first and then just go bounty hunting instead of go bounty hunting, then have to stop and travel and go bounty hunting again. They'd just rather get the travel out of the way and just bounty hunt a whole bunch. So it's like, okay, well, I can do that. Do you have a fuel scoop? Do you have the money for it? No. Okay, well, you know what? Fuel transfer. That's it. It's entirely up to them. If someone's joining the group, I'd like to let them be able to get out to our systems and do whatever they like. So it's like, I'll let them make the decision and just kind of go with it.
Yeah, in the end, it's the important thing is getting to us. And when they're here, they have our community to help them out. I guess my other ships, I wouldn't say I have a main. If you were to ask me what ship I fly the most, it'd be my Asp Explorer because I do a lot of Robbie-Go. I do have a bucket list for Elite Dangerous, and one of those items is to own every single ship. And I pretty much can. I just need the money now. I finished ranking up
on
for
my
the
bucket
cutter.
list. I want to own 10 Eagles.
Why?
It just ties back into a joke that I had with Leavism. There was one of the guys that had joined. Leavism asked him if he had what ships he had, and he was joking around. Leavism was almost in tears for probably about a good half an hour, to the point where he had to mute his mic and he was like hyperventilating. But Leavism's like, oh yeah, like what ships do you have? He's like, oh, I only have about 10 Eagles right now. And Leavism was like, why do you have 10 Eagles? He's like, I don't know, I just really like Eagles. I think like the best ship in the game. I have them all outfitted differently. Some of them for like, I have one for exploring, one for like combat, like PvE, one for PvP, one for trading, and this and that. And he's just going off. And like,
Oh my God.
I have ones traded with different loadouts. I just like to switch between all of them. I don't know. And then Leavism was in tears, so that's why I'm just telling him now, like, it just, my goal is to have 10 Eagles.
I still can't control myself.
So I have two things. The first thing is that I was once upon a time, a very long time ago, I was one of those new players that it wasn't you guys that found me first, technically. it was just a random person that found me on r/Elite Wings, and it was just one guy, but he wasn't doing anything in particular. He was known to help out a bunch of people, but I was still over in the starter area of the galaxy, and he came out in his Anaconda, and I was just like, the Anaconda is one of my dream ships, and obviously I've obtained that, and it's there's something humbling about seeing another player help you in an Anaconda, where it's just like they've reached this point in the game, you know that they know their shit, and it's I don't know, there's something about being helped by a person in Anaconda that just seems a lot more reassuring to that player and makes sure that they have actually a really good experience. That's just my point of view on it, but
Well,
yeah,
from what I've realized as well, a lot of the community and like a lot of the players, for the most part, like the people in Elite Dangerous that play, they're pretty friendly, and there's not a lot of people who are just dicks for just no apparent reason.
Yeah. I'd almost want to say like less than 5% of the player base is like that. Like less than 5% are the griefing assholes.
Well, keep in mind you might call them a grieving asshole, but like it's a sim, right? It's if they have the ability to go around and do that, and that's what they find fun. You're gonna have the odd few people that like to do that. Yeah. But yeah, it might suck for everyone else. But hey, you know what? If the developers didn't want people to be able to do that, they wouldn't put it in the game. But I do remember that the Frontier was actually talking about potentially doing something for the people that grief like that. But I think they decided not to because they wanted to have that freedom for people to be able to do whatever they liked. I don't know too much on that though. Like I can't really recite anything or make valid points to be entirely accurate. Like I could be wrong, but I'm just going based off of what I've heard.
Yeah, and to be honest, there is still a small part of me that wants to get a team of 4 pirate Anacondas and just start pulling people over and scaring them, but not necessarily shooting them. And just being like, hey, how's it going? You need help? Just pull them over, like scaring them. And just be like 4 heavily armored Anacondas just pull you over, and they're like, hey, do you need help?
We need 4 bright yellow Type 9s with nothing but railguns in a wing together and just pull over like one Sidewinder.
Oh my god.
And be like, hey, what are you doing? And like they won't know because like they're a brand new player and they just see this giant space cow in front of them and they're like, this is a big scary ship. Yeah, well, just imagine, and like bright yellow, so they're going to see us and we're just going to be like, you just like mess with them and be like, hey, give us your cargo, and then they'll jettison their cargo and just be like, no, we're kidding, you can pick it back up. And then just like watch the like little noob Sidewinder fly around and like trying to pick his cargo back up.
Oh,
he just spent like his full like, let's say $30,000 or $60,000 on buying like, let's say like 2 or 4 slaves to go trade.
And he's like, no. And then we're just kidding, you can pick it back up, have a good day.
And then he runs to the canisters and destroys them and loses all of his money.
Oh god. Oh, I feel bad already, but that sounds like so much fun. Oh man. Okay, so one of the next topics I want to get into, because we've obviously been mentioning ourselves a whole bunch, and obviously we're advertising ourselves as Simbad, so we can talk about a little bit about ourselves, a little bit about what we do and what we aim to do in the game, obviously without giving away too much, because obviously we still want to protect ourselves. But so obviously what we're doing is that we're an Elite Dangerous clan. I think we're boasting over, 60 active members at this point.
Yeah. Well, that would be active. But now, in general, right now we have 97 members on our Discord. If I try to kick anyone that hasn't been on in the past 7 days, it's only 3 members.
Okay, yeah.
If it's in the more than anyone that hasn't been on in more than a day ago, it's still only 3 members. Anyone that hasn't been on more than 30 days is only 1 person hasn't been on within a month. Within a week, there's only been 3 people that haven't been on once. Like, that's pretty solid.
Yeah. So we're pretty active, and the fact that we can still maintain these numbers is really good, considering the fact that I used to run one of the top guilds in the Old Republic for a really long time, and it was really hard to hold just even like this is started talking in the beginning stages, and of course MMOs are all different, but holding just even 10 active members for an extended period of time is hard, and holding nearly 100 people is definitely an achievement to me because I've never seen anything like this. So it's definitely humbling and a unique experience to be part of this large clan that is so active and devoted to being what we are.
And we only want to get bigger.
Yeah. So obviously what we do is obviously we're a clan. We want to exist in Elite Dangerous. As Smidget mentioned before, is that we're waiting for our minor faction to be implemented into the game, and that's still on standby. So we don't really have anything to talk about there. Not that we would, but essentially we're geared towards helping out new players and playing with each other as much as possible, so that no one ever feels alone playing Elite Dangerous. Because let's face it, in a galaxy as big as Elite Dangerous, well, technically our galaxy, it can feel very, very, very lonely. So yeah, we aim to help out new players as much as possible, give them the best start to Elite Dangerous, because, you know, when I first started playing Elite Dangerous, I was very, very, very scared of open play because, let's be honest, in a space sim where technically you can do anything without without huge repercussions, I was expecting a lot of griefers to be there, but turns out there actually aren't. And I was playing alone for the longest time, and that is basically what kept me in an on and off relationship with Elite Dangerous. Like, I think I played it for about 2 months, then was off of it for 3, came back for another 3, was off of it for 5. And this is the third time I've come back to this game, and this is the longest period of time I've actually stuck with the game at this point, where I haven't taken a break because I play with all of you lovely people in the clan.
Yeah, look at you now. Scare little Sidewinder to head of exploration, research and discovery.
I find that actually having a consistent group of people to play with that you actually know, and like, you know, you get to know the guys, and like, you know, it becomes like, you know, yeah, it's like a big group of friends essentially. Like, you know, I know a couple guys, they might go over and play Counter-Strike. Someone was asking me how Black Desert was the other day. People have been talking about the Division, and it's just, it almost seems more of like a friendly community, and with like Elite just being our main game, than anything. And it's just, that's essentially, I find, what it's become more than anything.
Yeah. So even though our main game is Elite, we still branch off into other things. Like, we aren't super dedicated to Elite. And I mean, like, the reason why we're doing this podcast is because mainly my hopes and visions for a podcast weren't met when I was searching for other podcasts about Elite Dangerous. But it's also for the fact that, you know, we love Elite Dangerous, and, you know, we're going to criticize it. We're going to, you know, give it glowing recommendations of what to do, all because we love the game. It doesn't matter if we play other games, it's just that Elite Dangerous happens to be the one that we play most. So I guess that's what qualifies us to talk about Elite Dangerous this way.
Then keep in mind as well, we also have members in the clan, even especially one of the founders, that have been playing since the beta, and they're quite knowledgeable, and like, they're a programmer themselves. They have extensive knowledge on the background simulation. And I know Leavism even has been reading up on it. And it's like, I find even once you start getting into the background simulation of how minor factions work, and you actually really understand the amount of depth that Frontiers put into the game to basically make it a consistently changing and dynamic universe to play in, it's pretty awesome, like, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Elite Dangerous is one of those games where it truly is a technical achievement, and I don't think we'll see another one until Star Citizen is actually a thing, to be honest.
No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky I'm still holding out on. I know it's supposed to be large, but the reason why I don't think it's going to be a large technical achievement is because it doesn't have the graphical fidelity that Star Citizen or Elite Dangerous is boasting to me.
Well, keep in mind that, off topic for a quick second, that Sean Murray, the developer of No Man's Sky, like the lead developer, he mainly did that out of passion for sci-fi and just started making it one day. He never even expected it to blow up into what it is, and he's extremely humble about it. So now, with that being said, he made it with emotion coming first, and like the feeling of being in a science fiction world, like exploration and that awe and wonder, and then being able to go around and wonder, like, you know, discover what's out there. He made it with emotion first, gameplay second.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not holding anything against No Man's Sky. It's just from my point of view, it's not going to be up there for me as high as Elite Dangerous is.
I think we can't really say until it's here.
Yeah, that's true. So that's a little bit about Simbad, what we do. Our main focus is, one of our main focuses is obviously helping other players. The other is just being a community that's all nice to each other, nice to other players as well, and just being there for other players. I
would say the number one rule for Simbad, I would say, is just don't be a bad guy.
Right. Yeah. We're all friendly people here, and if people listening to this that haven't heard of us before or not part of the clan that want to be, obviously you're welcome to join at any time because we don't say no to people unless they give us a reason to say no. That's
like being a bad guy.
Yes, like being a bad guy. Don't be a bad guy. Even better, don't be that guy. If you don't know what that
unless you're
guy
a bad
is,
guy who owns 10 Eagles, then you can join.
Yes.
The moment
Actually,
you said we're
what?
good people.
Actually, you know what? If you own 10 Eagles and are a bad guy, you can join anyway.
You just have to consistently go after Leavism in your Eagles.
Stop!
Until they're all...
To kill one is like, I've got 9 more.
That's funny. The moment you said that we're good people, I just interdicted a beginner Cobra. I was like, die, federal scum. And then I killed him.
Well,
in short, don't listen to Leavism. He never said anything. All right, so we got out what we wanted, what we do. The next thing is where we are. So obviously you can find us in the game. Most of us are on pretty regularly. We also run a Discord channel, which we're actually talking in, which is fantastic. And better way to contact us is actually through our YouTube channel. It was recently started up through my efforts. And I'm slowly putting content out onto the channel, and I'm hoping that a couple other content developers are going to pop up here and there because handling it all on my own is, I shouldn't say it's stressful, but ideally I don't want to be doing it the entire time because eventually we'll get to the point where we'll be producing so much content I just cannot handle it by myself. So
you also have to have like time for yourself and being able to
Right.
enjoy things that you enjoy as opposed to just like producing videos, because then it just becomes a second full-time job.
Yeah. And also finding that other content producer is going to be really hard because I'm insatiably picky about the way content is produced because I went to school for it. So that's the reason. Yeah, we're doing YouTube stuff right now. The only content on there is exploration stuff because that's what I do. I am planning on pulling other people's footage in the clan that they're recording to put together other videos, just small tidbits of footage and full videos of other content that you can find within Elite Dangerous, such as trading, smuggling, combat, PvP, whatever it may be. It'll be up on the YouTube channel at some point in time. I'm not going to say when because even I don't know. And I don't want to give myself a deadline because that stresses me out. But
I think we should also make that video of those 4 Type 9s.
That would be pretty funny. That would be that the Epic Sax Guy music. Just play that constantly through that entire video. That would be that'd be pretty funny. Yeah, you can check us out on YouTube. I'll probably provide links where we can in any of the descriptions, and most of what we talk about.
We also have the clan email as well.
Yes, we have the clan email, which I'll also give in the description where applicable. And yeah, you can check us out through there. And this is where the podcast will actually be published to, is YouTube, and the other place will be SoundCloud. I still have to figure out SoundCloud, but I'm expecting to have this podcast up by Saturday, the latest. So yeah, I'll have stuff figured out by then. Yeah, YouTube is a thing for us. It's our main outlet for content where you can kind of see what we do and what we experience. And yeah, that's all I can say about that, really. So obviously we were discussing before, dev updates being put on hold. The most recent dev update, for some reason, there was one that was published last week where they were talking about upcoming content for 2.1. I don't know exactly what happened there, because the update came out after they said they were going to wait until 2.1. And if you think about the content silence, it's a really, really long time to be not talking about your game.
Mm-hmm. Well, like even the one that came out, you're talking about the 3.3.16, yeah?
Yes.
March 3rd. Yeah, but they were talking about as well, even that credits will still will be featured as rewards, but they want to balance them to scale better with the difficulty and be more lucrative if you're well regarded by the minor faction. That's what it says.
Yeah. But it's kind of weird because again, they said that they weren't doing dev updates, and then I believe when they said that a week and a half later, this dev update came out, and a lot of people were like, "Oh." And then of course this week, everyone's going like, "So there's a dev update last week. Where's the one for this week?" And
Mm-hmm.
Frontier Developments is like, "Nah, we're still on content silence."
Yeah, well, they said they I know when Leavison was talking about the Robogo missions and them potentially being nerfed, like I think a big thing about that is they said along with any other changes they've mentioned, they're conducting a pass through the mission templates to make them more reliable and address issues seen in the current build. So Robogo, is it being considered an issue? By some it is. Some people consider it an exploit. Some people just say, hey, no, it's worth it because stack a bunch of missions and stuff to go that far. You can get screwed with one small mistake. And, an hour to 2 hours, depending on how many you stack to make all that money. If, you have to have the time put into it to do all the missions as well as one minor slip up, and that's it.
Yeah. And going on to Rodrigo a little bit, but not totally leaving behind the very long silence between, now and when 2.1 comes out. But there has to be some communication there, and obviously just the announcement of community goals is not going to be enough. So I'm almost kind of thinking, because there's 2 weeks when they said no dev updates, and then the March 3rd one came out. I'm almost thinking if they didn't almost say that they were doing bi-weekly updates, because we need to wait till next week to see if one comes out, but I almost kind of have a sneaking suspicion it might be bi-weekly or just monthly updates, because
keep in mind they said they weren't talking about a specific release for 2.1. They're aiming to have a beta at least by May.
Right, okay. Either way, it's still a long time to not talk about anything.
Well, if let's say they have it by May, let's say it comes out early May, right? Um, it's still about a month and a half, but like maybe a little bit before that, you would hear talk of beta, and then a couple of community goals here and there. Maybe like I think it's not going to be that long of a silence period, but I think it's more so right now. I think they're might be focused on any issues they might be having with any coming updates, or who knows, maybe they're staying quiet because they're working on something to do with Thargoids.
Yeah. And not to slam Frontier Developments too much, like we're happy to hear that they've delayed 2.1, because as I said before, in an age where a lot of content that comes out nowadays is very much incomplete or broken, the fact that they're taking the time to perfect it is music to my ears, at least.
Yeah, I don't want like a whole bunch of DLC, or I don't want, to have a game that's broken and it's a pain to play. And then I gotta wait, like, oh yeah, awesome, the update's here, but then now my experience becomes more painful to play over the next few months, when I would have rather have a complete product and I'd be like, wow, yeah, they did an awesome job with this. Like, there's no bugs, you know what I mean? And it's more so it's about their image too as well, because if they're consistently putting out quality content and without bugs and making sure that everything is ready and for the most part bug free, it's not going to be 100% perfect, but
yeah,
not being broken and being well made, if they maintain that standard like they have been, it's you get a lot more respect for the company itself when it comes to developing the games, because if they come to release something, that they've actually put a lot of work into it, and you're going to be getting something of quality, as opposed to, let's say, someone like EA and DICE with a lot of the Battlefields lately. They just keep knocking them down, like it's just consistent issue after issue, and it's just all hype and advertisement. And then on top of that, there's the DLC and seasons pass and shortcut packs to get all the unlocks for classes, and it's just all these microtransactions to support them, and like almost like it's almost like because of the pre-orders and all the advertisements, they've dumped all this money. So then now they structure their game in a way and release it before it's even ready to try to get all these microtransactions in place to get all the money back that they've lost on hyping up their game because they haven't released a product. And it seems like it's more about just coming out with like a newer version of pretty much the same game that isn't fully complete, but now because you're spent so much on hype and advertisement, this and that, you get it out there earlier, and then basically the microtransactions and all the DLCs and this and that and like the incompleteness of the game, it kind of over time it's shaped up, and you use the money from that to basically support everything.
Yeah. And of course, the extreme case of what you're saying is what's happening with Star Citizen right now, where it's like they reached a point where they kept making stretch goals and content promises with every amount of money made, and it got to the point where it got so out of hand where it's like the amount of content for the game pushed back the release itself, because technically Star Citizen was supposed to be out back in 2013, and here we are in 2016, and it's like we're getting piece by piece, but the full game was technically supposed to be out 3 years ago. Where is it?
Keep in mind, though, as well, Star Citizen, you look at Star Citizen and Frontier Developments, I would say they're rival space sims. Now, they're approaching the development two entirely different ways. Star Citizen's like, give us lots of money, you'll get your game with a bunch of content all at once.
Yeah.
That's the gist of it. There's obviously technicalities people can poke at. But now, when it comes to Frontier, they're kind of like, hey, this is what we want to do. We're going to start off like this, and we're going to kind of give you guys updates in installments. And in a situation where 2.1 comes around, they're going to say it's not up to our standards, or we're having financial issues, this and that. And then, like we've talked about earlier, that could be the reason for the skin sale, to get a little bit of extra a couple extra bucks to maybe they got like an outside professional to take a look at something that they're trying to do. So that's why the skin sale happened. Pay them to take a quick peek at their code or something. You know what I mean? You never know what's going on their end. But now, let's say, you're getting those installments and 2.1 being pushed back, they at least let you know and say, hey, we're sorry, but it's not up to our standards, or there's financial issues. But here's more community goals. You know what I mean? As opposed to, from my knowledge, like Star Citizen, all they have is the arena where you can fly your $400 ship around and fight other people, and that's about it. And I think there was something else that came out on for Star Citizen as well, but I don't play Star Citizen, so I'm not entirely sure.
Right. Yeah, it's games can be developed completely different ways, and each way has its pros and cons. But in the end, it's like, to me, whatever produces quality content, it's fine for me. I'm fine with waiting. I'll admit I was kind of sad to hear that 2.1 was delayed by a couple months. Like, usually if there's a delay, it's only by like a week or a month at most, but a couple months was pretty extreme to hear. But that it doesn't necessarily overhype what they're doing for 2.1, but it makes me hopeful that there's going to be a lot to do in 2.1 that's going to carry you over to the next patch.
Keep in mind as well, like they said that they wanted to do the mission overhaul. Maybe they're having issues with that algorithm, and they really want to, iron all the kinks out of how the missions are generated. But maybe they're finding things like Robogo, or for those donation mission exploits. And maybe they're trying to find what's causing them. And then when they tweak it, maybe other issues are popping up. We don't know how they're restructuring the missions, but anything that's procedurally generated, there's a huge room for any error to happen. It's all circumstantial, like based on the rest of like the algorithm and all the data that's in there, like basically all the variables with the huge amount of variables that could come into play. There's going to be a huge room for error, and to actually find where that error is, it takes a lot of work.
Yeah, and I may just be looking at the Horizons release with rose-colored glasses, but I remember when it was in beta, there were a number of large issues that were to be there. And the way that Frontier development works is that they have it in beta essentially up until release with all the fixes for everything. But beta was like a glitchy mess that I shouldn't say wasn't unplayable, but it was hovering that line where it was. And then, Horizons released, and it was a really smooth launch. Like, I can only think of maybe 5 major glitches, and like the biggest one was your SRV blowing up if you just hit a freaking rock that was the size of a pebble. But other than that, like it was one of the smoothest launches I've ever seen for a large piece of content and like a technical standard at that point for space sims. Like you can land on planets, and planets are huge, and the fact that they have to render that properly and make sure everything works while doing that, like
Well,
it was
procedurally
smooth.
generated as well.
Yeah,
But now keep in mind though is how fastly were those bugs fixed? Like the SRV bug, how quickly did that get fixed?
like a week and a half maybe.
Exactly. So now with that being said, look how on top of their bugs and stuff like that they are. They want that quality, right?
Yeah,
That's one thing about them that I've noticed. And keep in mind, like how I said, how games that are being released these days that should be in beta are being fully released.
yeah,
And then it's like only about a year after they're released are they actually playable. But it's like, why don't you delay the release of your game? But it's almost like the companies would rather either they can't afford it or they don't want to cut into their profits.
yeah.
And it's like they'd rather give people a broken product. But the fact that Frontier, the fact that Horizons came out with the beta and it was on the borderline unplayable, like you said, it's not necessarily the fact that it's maybe borderline unplayable, but it's labeled as beta. You know it's beta.
Yeah,
So
and that's what a lot
you're
of
getting
people
yourself
forget.
into.
That's what a lot of people forget is when they hear beta, they're like, "Oh, cool game, cool." They start playing, and it's like, "Oh, this is a glitchy mess. I'm not gonna play it." And it's just like, right, right there. It's like beta. It's pushed into your brain that it's a beta,
Here's the
not the
thing:
final
if
product.
Elder Scrolls Online, like I was playing that, like I played about 4 or 5 of the betas. I was in quite a few of even the closed beta tests. Now, with that being said, I was on top of every bug I found or encountered. I wrote a very detailed description of the bug in the bug report in the beta, like every single time, even if it was the same bug but like in a slightly different spot. I did the bug report because it was a game that I was actually really looking forward to, and I wanted it to be as bug free as possible, and I wanted it to be a solid game. So anything to help that out, I could. And some people will go and they'll play a beta just because, hey, I want to play this game, I can get to play it early, awesome. But now at the same time, it's like if you can be part of that, that debugging process where you're getting all, you're ironing out all the kinks in it, you might as well at least help a little bit
Yeah,
because
and
in the end, it's something that you're going to buy and play anyways,
it's one of those things
unless
where
you
it's
have an
like,
eye patch and a pirate hat while sitting at your computer.
yeah, and it's also one of those things where it's like a lot of people misunderstand the gravity that they have when it comes to speaking up about game developers' content. Because one of the things with Destiny is that there's a player report system for good, mild, and bad behavior. The mild being like stuff that's out of their control, like bad connections or some whatever. And it's just like a lot of people think that their reports, whenever they do it, don't matter. They actually do. And it doesn't matter if it's Destiny or Elder Scrolls Online or Star Citizen, No Man's Sky, whatever. It doesn't matter what game, those reports really matter because a dev somewhere is going to look over your report, especially if you worded it out as detailed as possible, and they're going to be able to fix it, and they're going to be able to fix it fast because of the detail that you gave them. Like your words do matter, and the fact that people don't exactly understand that is saddening because games could be a lot better if their player bases spoke up a lot more. Anyways, that's kind of getting into the really finer details of how Frontier Developments manage their community and manage their game. But I mean, considering the fact that Horizons is what it is and the fact that it has next to no major bugs that make it game breaking, like I can't even think of one out right now that's causing havoc. But it's it's a pretty solid release. Anyways, so we're gonna get into our wrap up topics here. First thing we're gonna talk about is the community goals that are going on. I only have one pulled up here that's starting really soon, which is the Canon launches Outpost campaign. And I'll just read the thing here. So it begins on. Oh, it began today actually, and it's running for 1 week. And from what I'm reading here, you need to bring Palladium to a certain star system. And of course, the link to this will be in the description where applicable. And do you guys have any other community goals that I did not see that are going on right now?
No, it seems like it's where they are. I know there's a community goal where they're trying to build a Federation capital ship, but I'm pretty sure that's the same thing.
Okay. And the last thing that we have here for news is there's a stream going on Friday. Obviously, if this is not up by then, it probably won't be. Then it happened. You can probably find it somewhere. But they're going to talk about everything you need to know about community goals since so many of them have been happening. And yeah, we'll provide a link when there is one of that to go around because I think it's actually going to be a really cool live stream. It's being live streamed on YouTube Gaming. So yeah, that's something to look forward to tomorrow. Anyways, that's going to be it for our very first podcast. Thank you all for listening. I'm Commander Corbin from Simbad, community manager and content manager. You can find me on Twitter at madcat_529 because I have 2 gamer names now. Don't need to reason out why that is, but just live with it.
It's Commander Evism signing out.
That was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, and it's Commander II space Midget space II. Also one of the other founders of Simbad. And I hope that anyone who actually does get a chance to listen to this that is in our group, I hope, if you're interested, just give us a shout and, we'll get you set up in the group and have an awesome time in a Type 9 shooting at Sidewinders. Well, not really, but gotta have a bright yellow skin and we'll just pull them over and make them jettison all their cargo.
Please
Those
don't.
Type 9s.
Please don't buy 10 Eagles.
Bye.
10 Eagles, dude.
Don't.
10 Eagles versus 1 Type 9.
Hey guys, thanks for listening. Bye.